Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Crop. I'm your host Anna Heslop and my guest today is Chris Coughlan, who's a partner in Rural Coach and has been running some succession planning workshops, including one recently in conjunction with Far and Beef and Lamb. Now, welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
Farm succession is something that plays on everybody's minds.
It is indeed.
Why is it so important? And what are we trying to achieve when we're talking about farm succession?
Well, it's really important because you're talking about the transition of something's been created by one generation to the next. And how you do that is the challenging piece. And there's probably three parts to it. One is around the financial and emotional security for mum and dad going forward. The second's around, that flexibility and the setup for the child coming into the farm or onto the farm. And then it's just the importance of having those non-succeeding siblings or children also feeling like they're a part of the journey.
So how are families doing that now? Is it something that they go, oh my God, we've got to sort this out, or are they thinking long term?
Some are proactive and some are reactive. So you get those that want to kick the can down the road, and it's really easy to get up in the morning and go out and do the work you need to do every day and think, I'll think about that tonight. You get home, you're tired, and so it goes on to the next day. So that's kicking the can down the road doesn't really resolve the issue. Those that are proactive, they start early. They work with their families, start the discussions about what it might look like. They try to think about where they want to go as the parents on the farm in 5 or 10 years, and start to have discussions with their children or get some professional advice and to help them through that process.
So when you say start early, what's early?
So yesterday's the best time to start, and plan B, today's just as good, but really you've got to start typically, kids around that sort of late teens, early 20s is really, really good, but it's about getting clear on where mum and dad want to be as they transition off the farm, and then what it will look like for those kids coming onto the farm, and those kids who won't be coming onto the farm. So it's about getting those conversations really clear about what a good outcome looks like for that family.
And so is it mum and dad that makes all those decisions?
Well, mum and dad are the primary people involved here. They've worked for 40 years, possibly more. And so it's really important that they have an opportunity to consider about where they want to be and what that next stage of life looks like and how they might get there. But the conversation has to be across the whole family, because it's really important to have everything, all the information on the table so that everybody can make good decisions. It's really important for that child coming onto the farm to understand what the situation is from a business and economic perspective, and those or children coming onto the farm. So how many mouths does the farm need to feed? How many families does it need to support? It also needs to support mum and dad exiting. So what does that look like?
Okay, and things can go wrong.
Yep.
And in your workshop, you kind of provide some horror stories of things that can go wrong. Why do you talk about the things that go wrong?
Sadly, we always, in agriculture, we're always looking for case studies, and it's really nice to have, those success stories out there. But the ones we really learn from are the ones that don't go so well. So we pop up a case study within our workshop for the groups around the tables to work together, and they each get an opportunity to think about it from mum and dad's perspective, the case study, and then they move around the table and they get to think about it from the succeeding child's perspective, and then they move around the table again and they think about it from the non-succeeding child's perspective. Now, really do get asked to think about things like that. And suddenly they realise the information that needs to be available to them to be able to make good decisions. And it's about moving people from, and particularly the children involved, from I think this is happening and making assumptions about what's working with mum and dad to I know, because the right information's on the table and they can be a party to those discussions and support decisions or help make decisions because all the information's there.
So communication.
Yes, effective communication.
So communication's really important, but you also, in your workshops, you touch on 4 what you call foundation principles for having a successful farm succession.
Yes.
What are those 4?
So number 1 is sound relationships. And notice that's number 1. It's not structure, it's sound relationships. So, it's really important for the family to have be able to have good conversations in a safe environment with each other about issues around succession. Number 2 is willingness. That's the willingness of all parties to be a party to the journey, because it is a journey and it's not an event and it takes time. And that's about, just being able prepared to come to the table and to say what you need to say, but also to be heard and listen to. Profitability, of course, it's really important that the parents' needs are met first. We talked about this before, but also the profitability of the farm. You can't transition a farm that's not profitable. It needs to be profitable and able to sustain mum and dad exiting. It needs to be able to sustain the successful coming onto the farm. But also those children that are not coming onto the farm need to feel that they've been treated fairly, and they're a party to the journey.
And so is fair equal?
No, fair and equal are 2 different things.
Right.
But I think the thing that about fair and equal is that if all the information is on the table and everybody is a party to the decision making and the direction within the parents want to go with the farm, it moves people from again, those assumptions, and I think, to I know, so that they understand the situation and around the business and the economics of the farm, so they can make, with knowing the information and it's clear and it's transparent, they can all make good decisions for themselves. And what you'll find often with those coming on to, those who are not coming onto the farm, is once they have all the information, that their baseline might be that they really want to see the farm stay in the family, but they don't really. They often want some inheritance as well, and that's where the fair and equal piece comes in. But what does that look like? For many, it won't be at the cost of the farm staying in the family. So it's that fair and equal. It's just trying to find that balance and where people's values and what matters most to them sit, and we work quite a bit in that area.
Okay, so dealing with conflicts, because there's going to be disagreements along the way.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things there. Once again, coming back to those values, we do quite a bit around the family values to start off with. We create an environment that's safe for everybody to participate in. We work with people individually to start off with, so that creates an opportunity for everybody to have their say with somebody independent who is not conflicted in any way, which is really helpful. That information is shared within the family then by agreement. And then when we start to get to those family meetings, we have a piece which we call rules of engagement. And that's an opportunity for everybody around the table to say, look, how are we going to have this conversation today? What are our bottom lines? What's important to us? Starting with mum and dad and then moving around to the children and their partners. And generally that environment, creating the opportunity for the transparency of information, and then that environment when they all get together and they've got some base understanding around business and each other's intentions over the next 5 or 10 years, creates a great opportunity to get those rules of engagement in place and then have really decent conversations.
So do you think farm businesses are any different from other family businesses in this extent?
No. And we certainly, I myself have worked in the horticultural area as well. Just every situation where you've got a family business and you've got multiple parties involved, it's really important from that succession in that succession journey that everybody is involved, everybody understands that there's some transparency there, and that, as we say, mum and dad cater for first, and then the conversations come in behind that.
If every family business has similarities, at the same time, every family is going to be different, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. So, Rural Coach has probably worked with over 500 families throughout New Zealand. We're a national organisation, and so we've had a lot of experience in this area. The thing about the succession journey is that every family and family dynamic is different, and every business, all those similarities will be different. So, without a doubt, everyone is tailored independently to the family and their needs. And we tweak things as required for each family. But generally, the process is the same.
So what is that process? Let's start at the start. I'm given I've got a problem. I don't know what I'm going to do about succession. Help. I need some help and advice.
Yeah. So, look, the first thing is to start with the end in mind. Working with Rural Coach, you have an independent facilitator. So the advantage an independent facilitator comes with is that they have no history or background with the family at all. And what we do is we start people first. So we work with the mum and dad. We get them to start thinking about where do they see themselves in 5 years' time or 10 years' time? What does that look like? There's the tangible and the intangibles. There's the batch and Akara, or there's the boat and the sounds, but there's also about being having more flexibility around time, access to the grandchildren, things like that. So, but then we need to think about, so what does that lifestyle entail, and what are they going to need financially to support that lifestyle? And then who's coming through, and what are the children thinking from mum and dad's perspective? And then they give us the opportunity to go and talk to each of their children individually. We do a values and discovery piece with everybody, and that you'll find that the values piece is interesting because it's just around getting a sense of values across the family, individuals within the family, and that always creates an area of commonality where you can find areas of agreement. Often it ends up being around family and the importance of Christmas Day, or those getting together or whatever it is, and then it's moving through to everybody sharing that information, and then starting to get around the table around conversations around alongside that business information on the farm. So it's people first, then moving towards what does a good outcome look like for our family, and then from there working with other professionals around what does the structure look like to meet that outcome, but also having that flexibility and allowing for that flexibility. So there can be a whole lot of components that can come in behind that, which might be around communication plans, operation plans, transfer plans. There's a whole lot, but that front bit is the most important piece, really.
Obviously, there's lots of different ways that can play out. Some family businesses are companies, some are solely owned, some are divided up. Is that all sorts of things that you can take into consideration?
Absolutely. So we get all the information out on the table up front about where they are now, and then understanding where they want to go. Some of those things may need to change. So it may be that they need to and almost inevitably will, be back in touch with their lawyer or their accountant around getting things to be set up so that transition can happen, but allowing for that flexibility. And when I say flexibility, look, we all know things in life change. So, you might set a 5 or a 10-year time plan around transition, depending on how early you start, obviously. But the reality is that we have births, deaths, marriages, divorces, you name it. It happens to us, unfortunately, or ill health. All these things can mean that the path that you've set or the direction of play that you set takes a bit of a deviation. And as a consequence, often many families will set up an advisory where once a year they'll get together as a family with an independent facilitator just to say, where are we now on our journey? What's changed? What impact will it have? And do we need to make any changes as a consequence to the direction of play?
So it's all about, I think I'm going to summarise, probably wrongly.
No, not at all.
Communication, being honest and realistic, and being prepared to move forward with everybody's best interests at heart, but also acknowledging that not everybody's going to get equal.
Absolutely. And so I think what matters most is the phrase we like to use. What matters most to mum and dad? And often it is, at the end of the day, we want to sit around the Christmas table at lunchtime on a Christmas day and have a lot of banter and laughter, which we've had all our lives. We don't want that to change. So if you start with people first, you get the information out on the table that's required, that everybody feels that they have been a party to the conversation and heard, that goes enormous way to getting a successful outcome. Structure and legal documentation and everything will come in behind that.
Cool. Thanks very much, Chris. Well, everybody, if you are on the journey towards succession planning, there's some ideas to think about. Communication, honesty, being realistic about what you want and what you can afford. There's some things to ponder about while you are having a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.